So what we've got here today is a basic photosynthesis graph. But quite often what happens is we get more complicated graphs, or graphs with more than one line added to it. So at the moment we've got the rate of photosynthesis in however that is measured on the side, and then light intensity. So down here this is going to be dark, and then up here this is going to be very, very bright. And obviously because plants are going to need light, as a general rule, the brighter it is, the faster they're going to be photosynthesizing. However, at some point, something else is going to become the limiting factor, what they need, so it's going to plateau and go straight. So let's have a think here. If this is being limited by temperature, for example, if we did the experiment again at a higher temperature, what we would end up doing is getting a slightly different curve. So it would probably follow exactly the same trajectory. It would go a little bit higher and then it would plateau. So this would be our 30 degrees Celsius curve. Because it had extra kinetic energy, because it was hotter, temperature was not limiting. So because temperature was not limiting, that plant could respond to even more light than it could before at 20 degrees. And because it could use more light, because it was now warmer, it could keep increasing, and then it would get to a point where something else would be a limiting factor. For example, it might be the amount of carbon dioxide. So if now carbon dioxide is the limiting factor, in theory what we could do is keep at 30 degrees and up the amount of carbon dioxide. And then we would have another curve drawn on here. So it would follow the same trajectory and it would go a little bit higher before it balanced out again. So this would be 30 degrees, and this would be with twice our normal amount of carbon dioxide. Either way, you still get an increase and eventually you will get to a plateau. When you see a graph already drawn like this, it's a little bit complicated to know what's going on. My advice would be to start with the lowest curve and ignore the rest. So mentally or physically, if it helps, go like that and ignore them. Ground yourself in the basic graph. So it goes up and it goes along, just like normal. The ones that I've got higher than it must be photosynthesizing better. Then what you need to be doing is looking for how they are different. So this one here is 20 degrees, these ones here are 30 and 30. So they've definitely changed and experimented with the effect of temperature. So you would be expecting in your explanation to be referencing that the temperatures were different. If you were simply asked to describe it, you would say the higher temperature curves are higher up the graph. You wouldn't need to say why that was the case. Just that you have noticed that temperature is higher up when it is a high temperature, colder temperatures are lower down. We've also got reference to carbon dioxide on here. So you would then talk about that, the effect that carbon dioxide, when it is in higher concentrations, causes a higher rate of reaction. In general, that means that your conclusion would need to take account of all of the things that we have seen. So you might have, from this set of graph, high temp, high CO2 will give you a higher rate of photosynthesis. Keep an eye out for temperatures being very, very high and having the effect of denaturing of enzymes. So ground yourself on that very first curve, ignore the rest, work out what's going on, then compare and contrast with what the other graphs, the other lines are showing.